Welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. We're going to talk to you a little bit this morning about your technology toolkit and what should be in it for the post-pandemic landscape. I'm Alex. I'm with Portland Internetworks, and we've got some other Portland Internetworks folks on the call as well. And then we also have some folks that are joining us from Straight Edge Technology over in Corpus Christi and San Antonio, Texas, and they're going to tell us a little bit about what they've experienced as well. So yeah, just a few things before we get started. So first of all, you're all muted. Sorry about that, but you can change that. You can unmute yourself. The little mic button, if you haven't already found it, is on the bottom left of your screen. We are recording this session, so just a heads up. And if you have any questions, you can submit them in the chat window, which is in the sort of center of that control panel at the bottom of your screen, that little message box. But we are going to have plenty of time for questions and answers at the end. So if you have a question as we're talking, feel free to fire it into the chat, and otherwise we'll circle back around and catch up with any questions in the end. So welcome. As I mentioned, I'm Alex. I'm the communications manager here at Portland Internetworks. I work with Rainey, who's on our marketing team. She's our marketing coordinator, so she's running the show here today. And yeah, that's a little bit about what I do. Rainey, why don't you tell us what you do?
Okay, I'm Rainey. I'm the marketing coordinator at Portland Internetworks, and I handle all of our external events, social media, and pretty much like anything you might see on the website or the blog.
Awesome. Yeah, so as I mentioned, Rainey's running the show today, so if you have a great time, you got to make sure to give her kudos. Yeah, so we have a couple panelists today. We've got Doug Westervelt from Portland Internetworks, who's our CEO here in Portland. And then we have Doug Miller, because we wanted to keep things very not confusing. We chose two folks with the same name, who runs an MSP, which is a peer company of ours in Corpus Christi and San Antonio, Texas. So Doug Westervelt, why don't you kick us off a little bit and tell us a little bit about Portland Internetworks and what you do?
Hi, everybody. It's nice to see so many familiar faces. There are some folks that I have not talked to or seen in person. So this is as close as we get for a little while, but thanks for joining us. So I'm the CEO, which means I'm basically the chief bottle washer and doorstep sweeper. Just try to keep everybody in line and see if we can keep the company moving in the right direction. Portland Internetworks is a 23-year-old technology service provider. We started out as a internet service provider way back in the 90s. Pivoted into like full comprehensive managed IT services. And we also do projects and sort of time and materials, a lot of, we like to say EMT for IT. So if you need anything, either short or long term, we probably do it for you.
Awesome. Thanks, Doug. Doug Miller, how about you? Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do over in Corpus Christi?
Sure. Thanks for having us on, Doug. I've known Doug for a number of years now, and we've had great conversations talking about how technology changes businesses and then how to run our own companies and provide great service. So I'm thrilled to be on here with you guys. We're an IT service provider here in South Texas. We started the company in 2006, so we're going on 15 years now. And we primarily have customers in the healthcare vertical, law, and then we have a pretty big focus in oil and gas as well. And so a lot of changes in our industry and in the businesses that we serve in the last couple of months. And I think it's a great opportunity to think and talk through some of these technology challenges that we're going to have over the next couple of months going forward. And hopefully I can provide you guys some insight around what Texas is doing well and maybe what Texas is doing poorly and how that affects the businesses that we serve and how technology, is involved in that. So thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Doug. I'm really excited because you all have an interesting perspective, not only in that obviously you know quite a bit about technology, but you're also running your own businesses in this landscape as well. So really excited to hear what you all have to say today. So I know that we do have some folks that are in different parts of the country. We've got, I think, mostly folks here in the Portland area on the call, but we've got some other geographies represented as well. So just to kind of set the stage a little bit, where we're at here in Portland, all Oregon counties are officially starting to reopen. Multnomah County is in phase 1 of reopening. It's sort of a phased plan here in Oregon. I think that's probably pretty standard, but just in case it's not. So Multnomah County is phase 1, which is the county that we're in here. So we're kind of starting to see things open up. You can go and get a haircut now, and you can go out to dinner as long as you're spaced appropriately from the folks seated next to you. but we're still operating under some guidelines that make coming back into an office environment a little bit difficult, especially for folks that are in the non-essential business sector and maybe haven't been at this whole time. So Doug Westervelt, I'll start with a couple questions for you, and then Doug Miller, if you have anything to add, feel free to chime in anytime, and then we'll roll into those questions for you. So Doug Westervelt, now that things are starting to open up, it is kind of easier for us to wrap our brain around what the new normal is going to look like. It doesn't feel quite as nebulous as it did a couple months ago. But as I mentioned, there's still some things that are not quite laid out for us. And I think it's particularly challenging for folks that are in an office environment where maybe we're not necessarily dealing with customers face-to-face all the time. For businesses that operate in that type of environment or have some sort of office operations, what do you think phasing into reopening is going to look like?
Well, I think bottom line is it means that not 100% of the workforce is going to be in the office 100% of the time. I think we're seeing and hearing from a lot of our customers that people are returning to the office in different ways, but they're all in partial ways. So as I'm looking over Chad Davis's shoulder, who's in the office here with us, normally we've got, about 35, 40 people in the office, and kind of looking around, I think we've got about 7 or 8 folks here today, including some of the people who are in the office today, which are not going to be in the office every single day. So maybe they're going to be on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule, or a Tuesday, Thursday type of thing, or maybe even just periodic. So what's interesting is that, if we rewind a couple of weeks ago, or for maybe Doug Miller a couple months ago, you're looking at a situation where everybody is working out of the office. Everybody's trying to scramble. Everybody's trying to make do with whatever kind of gets them by. Now, I think with people making a transition back, we've got this interesting inflection point where what was sort of good enough before is not good enough now. We're not quite in the whole everybody's back, it's February or it's 2019, and we're going to still have these new challenges, new struggles. So as we're having internal meetings now, it was 2 weeks ago, everybody was on WebEx or Slack from their bedrooms or whatnot. Now there may be 2 or 3 people in the office that are in that meeting, plus a bunch of people from home. So how do you keep everybody engaged and connected when you have 2 different unique types of workforces, and you don't want anybody to be at a disadvantage versus the people that are, say, in the office? And even in the office, we only have our internal rules now are 2 people in a conference room at a time. So if we're going to have a 5-person meeting, 2 of which are at home, 3 of which are in the office, we still have got to do this weird hybrid setup where people are in the office, but maybe hiding in a corner somewhere. So we're having to figure out new ways of collaborating.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point that I definitely think that you'll leave with some information on today, is how do you take this sort of approach that you took to getting through what we thought initially was going to be 4 to 6 weeks, and it turns out some of us are still working from home and probably going to be at it for a while. And how do you translate that to a more long-term solution now that you know what you're working with? So
well, and I think this is an interesting point too, because right now, not sorry to cut you off, but is that maybe 3 months ago, everybody was doing whatever they could do to get online, right? That was just the scramble to get home and get connected, and that was okay. Like, we're having lots of conversations with people, and dogs are walking by, people are walking by, the internet's going in and out, and everybody's very sort of understanding. But now, as we start to look at it and we say, like, there's going to be somebody working from home, there's going to be some challenges, and as business adapts quickly, and customers' expectations, whether it's our customers or our customers' customers or whatnot, at some point, this sort of like half-baked solution is no longer going to be acceptable. If you are choosing to buy a service or a product from maybe 3 different vendors, each of which who are connecting with, the way that they collaborate and the way that they communicate with you is going to have some impact on the decisions that you make, right? So we were talking a little bit earlier about just headsets, for example. When we sent everybody home, we scrambled probably on Amazon and grabbed whatever we could, and we got these Logitech $30 Bluetooth headsets, which everybody in our company has got and probably universally despises. I'm back to my Apple earbuds, but as we now settle in and we say, like, this is going to be a long-term thing. Unfortunately, I didn't receive them in time to set them up, but like the company made an investment in some Jabra headsets now to really raise that game and provide some higher fidelity, higher quality gear. Alex, I know you bought these. I don't know how much they cost. Hopefully they weren't outrageous.
No, they weren't too outrageous. It's an investment.
So that's kind of the point that I'm making, which is that it was, I think everybody just grabbed what they could, throw it in a bag, get home, right? Connect up to your office computers, connect up to your server somehow, do a lot of like crazy things, whatever it takes to get online. But now I think we're making that pivot, as it's not going to be just like it was in February all at one time, and it's going to be a longer term phase approach. So we were talking with Doug Miller earlier, we're doing a little sound check, and Doug was explaining that he's made some changes to his work at home rig. Doug, do you mind like sharing what you've got there too?
Yeah, sure. So, I guess typically when I was in the office, I had a nice Plantronics headset that was attached to my phone. I would usually use it for meetings and things. But as I realized, man, I'm on so many Zoom calls and just collaborating with our people and our team and our customers. I invested in a pretty high-end, like podcast microphone. It's not attached to my face. It's off the camera right now. Hopefully I sound good, and one of the things that we kind of felt like, we kind of realized we were going to be doing this for a while. So, despite the fact that tech is in the news, everybody say, hey, we're opening up. It's in various sort of stages. And if you've been following the last week or so, we might be regressing a little bit and maybe going to a little more locked down because of how kind of we've reopened. So like our company, we're still, if you can work from home, you're working from home right now. And that's, as you can see, that's where I am. I've been home since March. But we wanted to make things accommodating because just like Doug was talking about, our customers have gotten over the fact that it was a scramble. Now we want business as usual, despite the challenges. And that's what we're trying to get to right now, is how do we still, provide great service and great support for people, despite the fact that our environments have all changed quite a bit. And I was going to talk a little bit about our reopening. There were some people that were ready to rope drop their office and run right back, in as soon as things reopened. But we've had a number of businesses that have elected to be way more flexible than I thought they ever would have been, and allow the hybrid model of there's some people in the office and there's some people at home, and we're fine with that right now. And I was really surprised going in. I was talking to the different leaders in our customers, and I thought they would have all, as soon as we can, we're all going back to the office, and that's just not what happened. It's been way more conservative than maybe I expected.
Yeah, and I think that sort of newfound flexibility that we've had is beneficial for sure. And I actually was talking with one of our folks here from a safe social distance as I was getting coffee yesterday, and he was saying that his wife's company is actually just never going to go back to their office. Their lease is up and they're just never going back. So I'd be curious to hear from you all for what you think for those who are going to that fully remote, like what additional investments do they need to make? Not just in hardware, but from a security standpoint, storage, those sorts of things, in order to translate this from a Band-Aid solution to a more permanent solution.
Sure. For me, at least, for the people who have heard me talk before, most of my conversations around technology are couched in conversations about productivity or continuity, security, company culture. I like technology, but I'm not so interested in technology for the technology's sake. So when I think about, whether it's people moving back and forth from the office to home, whether en masse, like everybody run to home and everybody run back to the office, or if it's just individuals changing up their workforce, I'm looking at now in terms of like, what are the permanent investments? Nothing permanent, right? What are the investments people could be making, since it's just not a mad scramble? What are some things that we can do to like up the productivity game? I like airplane math back when I liked airplanes. And airplane math to me is stuff that you can figure out on an airplane without having to pull out the calculator. So let's just say, you're a leader in your organization and you've got a workforce and everybody makes 50,000 a year. Let's make it 60,000 a year and make the math even easier. So $5,000 a month. If you could raise or lower their productivity by, say, 10% using technology, or lower it by having poor technology, maybe by neglect, or like, hey, this is going to turn around anytime. I mean, that has some very profound cost impacts on your organization. So let's say in a 10%, everybody's working from home on their couch, on their laptop, on a 12-inch screen. Okay, let's make an estimate that makes them 10% less productive. And if you're paying that person $5,000 a month, you are allowing a $500 per employee per month productivity hit, right? Multiply that times whatever your workforce is, and that's a pretty big loss. And as much as we were all very understanding a few months ago about like, hey, well, this is hard, we're doing the best we can, at some point, and I think that point is becoming now, we all answer to some higher calling, higher purpose. It could be investors, it could be a board of director, it could be, your spouse to say, it's like, you're not bringing home the bacon. There is a point at which it's no longer going to be an excuse to say like, it's hard. So how do we manage those productivity challenges and then maybe leverage some technology to make them better? We were talking about, headsets earlier. If you think about, like, if you're in sales, the way that when you collaborate or you communicate with somebody that's on the other side of that transaction, the way they communicate, the way that you express yourself is very, very crucial to that buying experience, right? We can pivot a little bit to security. So I don't know, Doug Miller, like roughly, we also have a guest, Doug Smith, on the call because there's not enough Dougs. Doug also runs an IT company out in the eastern side of the world. But for you guys, what percentage of your tickets are VPN or remote access related? My connection dropped. I'm trying to log in and it says there's already a session started. I'm going to guess for us maybe 15, 20%. And you think about the productivity challenge that we have. Doug, what are you seeing, Doug Miller?
Yeah, I don't know if I know the percentage, but I feel like when people have asked me, just friends and other business people, they're like, hey Doug, how's it going? What's your business like right now? And I was like, well, it got a lot more complicated because it was a lot easier to help 50 people in one building. And now I'm helping 50 people and all of their home networks and all of the stuff that went into what they had at home that was not really ready for this. And so, we've felt like that increased demand on what used to just be a convenience, really, like at home, like, does Netflix work? And can my kids use their iPad? Like, that's what your home network used to be for. Now it's required, like, my home network has to be functional for me to make a sales call and for me to collaborate with my team. Like, that's different. That's a different expectation of my home network. I had a conversation last week. We have one customer that's kind of gone ahead and said, we're probably going to close one of our branch offices and have that whole group of people work from home. First time, at least in our client base, that's happened as a result of COVID. And she said, what do you think I should do? And I was like, well, here's what I think just happened. You just shifted or you just added a burden to your business. Now you're responsible for that staff person's home computer system and network. And you weren't before. Before, it was just a convenience for them to check email at home. Now you're wanting them to work from their home. So in this particular client's example, like, we're going to change from desktops to laptops so that those people can have a more mobile setup at home. They're probably going to get bigger monitors than what they had before. They have a whole voice over IP and telephony problem that we got to solve for them to really have people work from home. And I kind of explained it not unlike what Doug mentioned. We want to make it to where they're equally or better productive, when they move home. You can't afford to not invest in the technology for them to work from home and it be worse than when they were at the office. Like, you can't afford to have, professionals trying to work from home and being, hindered by the equipment that you've given them. And, the comment back and forth from the customer was, well, I don't want to, like, I'm not responsible for their home computer. And I was like, yeah, and I'm not either. Like, we can't.
You just became responsible.
Yeah, we don't have any control over that device. There's security concerns around their home equipment. The easy answer is invest in technology that they can take home. And that's probably how we operate for our own staff. And we're just kind of preaching that to our customers. Like, if you care about their productivity, even when they're at home, you're going to have to invest in it for them to work from home.
Perfect opportunity for like a show and tell, a little bit of a plug. I literally just got this morning. This is a Cisco Meraki Z3 home office, small office, branch office device. I think with licensing, they're running about, that is not its total sales pitch, but just for some context, they're about $395 or so for a 1-year license. The reason I mention that is because, right now, as Doug was saying, you've got all these people who previously, they're spending $60 on a Comcast or a Spectrum or a CenturyLink circuit or wherever you are for their home, and it's the reliability is whatever it is, and then they double click on a remote access VPN type of solution to get back to the office, and if it's funky, well, back in the day, it was sort of a temporary thing, or it was a luxury for them to work at home. The difference now on this is, it's got basically, it's like having a branch office at a home office. So, and the pricing, and again, I don't mean to be a shill for Meraki, but whether you use Fortinet or Palo Alto Networks or whatnot, the idea is now you've got potentially 50 branch offices, and now you've enveloped all those branch offices with the same security that you've got at the home office. The idea of everybody working at home using the technology, what they would work at, like at a hotel or a coffee shop, I think those days are approaching behind us bit. There's a lot of people that were working remotely previously because it was conducive to their travel schedule or going out and reaching out with customers. Now, people working remotely, the expectation in terms of the reliability and the security is almost the same as a branch office. So what are the options, or what are the work setups that you can have to make it a one-person branch office? And that's kind of the methodology I'm thinking of. So when we sent everybody home, we sent everybody, like our company, at least thankfully, a decision we made a long time ago was that we set everybody up with laptops. Nobody's got really a desktop here. So picking up their computer and taking it home was no problem. But we also saw the productivity challenges of that. Here in the office, they've got 3 monitors, they've got sit-stand desks, they've got all the ergonomic stuff. And we were concerned about people going home and like working off their little 12-inch screen on their laptop. So we sent dual monitors home with everybody who had room for them at home, and tried to do the best we could to kind of keep that productivity the way it is. Now, as we're moving into this new phase, and there's going to be people working from home for a quite longer time, we're starting to look at things like, should we be sending home sit-stand desks? Should we be sending home more monitors? And for the folks that are, maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday working at home, and Tuesday, Thursday working in the office, does that mean that on Tuesday, Thursday, and let's say they're Tuesday, Thursday, they're at home, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, they're in the office? Totally confused. Does it mean that 50% of the week they are only going to be 70% productive? If that's the case, that's not a good long-term solution if it's going to go for a while. So now we're starting to look at it for the folks in our office, and maybe for the same for some people on the call. If you have people that are going to be working occasionally in the office and work from home, how do you address that? Is it worth a few $100s to set them up with a dual monitor setup at home, in addition to the dual monitor setup at the office, right? And you might look at it as a business leader and say like, well, that's a lot of money for somebody who's choosing to go back and forth. Well, the question really is, can you afford not to have them have the equal amount of computing and technology rig at home? If you do the math that we were just talking about, if you lose 10% of their productivity, whatever you would have spent on monitors or a sit-stand desk or all the things that, a nice headset, you're going to lose that productivity in month 1. And this, I don't think anybody here thinks this is all going to go away in 30 days.
Yeah, and I think, obviously you want your people to be productive, but I think for the most part, people also want to be productive. Most people don't want to have to fight with their headset or WebEx or, the VPN for 5 hours a day out of their 8-hour workday. you know, and so I think a lot of what attracts employees these days is technology and access to resources, and that's what makes someone go work for a company. Of course, culture is a major component of that as well. But I mean, I think it's important that you provide that stuff for your people as well, so that they're staying engaged in what you're trying to do and they're continuing to propel your mission forward, because ultimately they're one of the spokes on the wheel, you know, so.
Absolutely. You know, employees want to feel valued. And I think that, you know, making investments in folks is going to be reciprocated in terms of their productivity. Further, like, you know, Doug, so you changed from, you know, headset and now you're on, you know, your rig that you described. You know, I'm sure you've got a little Zoom fatigue, but has it changed, you know, your level of engagement since having a nicer rig?
Yeah, it didn't. I wasn't home, but maybe a week before I went back to my office and stole my office chair and drug it home with me. You know, just those little things that help make a big difference. You know, so yeah, having a, you know, and I did the same thing with my home. So maybe this is just a human nature thing, but I found things I wanted to fix while I'm sitting here working for, you know, I changed my mic, I changed my keyboard, I went and got a better chair. Like there's some stuff that I wanted to do to impact my, you know, productivity as soon as we kind of realized that we weren't just going to be home for a couple of weeks. And I think it made a big difference. And I know a lot of our staff has done the same thing. They grabbed monitors that they needed because it made it better for them to work from home. And as a company, we probably are going to go in the direction of laptops over desktops for the whole company, where we maybe had not made that decision before. So it's changing, you know, what we do. And I think it's going to change what we position for our clients as well. Because I want them to have the flexibility, because you know, we don't want to get behind like we did last time in this. You know, we had no way to plan for what happened, but we can plan for what happens when we all start to roll back. You know, the chaos of what happened when we all went home, unforeseen. You know, nobody came and said, Doug, why didn't you think about this? You know, but they're going to be relying on, you're going to be relying on your IT providers and the people that you trust for technology. You're going to be relying on them to help you get back in a real smart way. And so that's what we're trying to talk to our clients about now, is how do you get back in a smart way?
It's funny, you know, and I have this philosophy, which is, you know, when you think like, well, is it going to end up like A or is it going to end up like B? Life is just not that way. It's always a mix of A and B together. So, you know, my anticipation is whether it's everybody rushes home and rushes back to the office, or if it's like individuals that are doing it, just like we have some folks that are doing that here. You know, we're starting to see, okay, now how can we address some sort of that like security in flight, security in motion of the devices? So, you know, there are a lot of companies, a number of them who are our customers, that were all on desktops. And then, you know, on the day that everybody said go, they picked up their desktops, they picked up their monitors, and they headed home. And then we anticipated, okay, I think all of us IT providers anticipated that, you know, someday in the future, everybody's going to pick up all their rig and they're going to take it back to the office, and we're going to be really busy for another week while everybody does that. My guess is that it's going to be just like this weird, you know, washing back and forth. And so now we're starting to think about, I mean, anybody who gets service from us, their mobile devices, their laptops are all encrypted, all the data. So if you know, the number of laptops that are going to get left on the tops of Jeeps as their driver drives away is going to increase as the number of people are moving their computers back and forth between home and office, right? So obviously encryption is a big thing that we're looking out for. Part of it's just physical security too of the devices. Dell, it turns out, sells a bunch of laptop bags. You never knew it, but they have sell 60 different types of laptop bags. We never really thought about that before, but now as we're supporting and we're managing people's IT, you know, imagine one of your employees or one of your coworkers, they leave their laptop on the top of their Jeep and they drive off and they're like, oh, well, at least the data was encrypted, so they don't have to worry about somebody picking it up and, you know, getting the secret recipe to Coca-Cola or whatnot. But now there's a bunch of downtime that's associated with that. Fortunately, laptop lead times are nowhere like they were a couple months ago. But you know, you think about all that downtime from damaged IT equipment. So now we're starting to look at and say, like, how can we outfit our people to have better bags, better protection, that type of thing. And then finally, as people are moving back and forth, I don't have kids. I know a lot of people on the call have kids. You're focused on one thing, and then somebody's like pulling on your arm the other way, and then the dog's barking, and then you get in the Jeep. There's all these distractions that are happening. The bad guys know that that's what's going on. The more distracted you are, and the more out of your element that you are, the more vulnerable you are to attacks, whether they're social engineering attacks, or they are technical attacks, like, hey, I didn't notice that there was like a flashing red light in my taskbar because I was running around setting up my rig at home, that type of thing. So this is another time to be making a lot of investments in security. And I'm not here to like sell a bunch of like security fear, but we're seeing a ton more attacks being reported to us by our clients. I see Doug and Doug nodding, so I'm sure they're seeing that in their companies as well. And again, back to making some investments, some basic investments. I think those are really prudent to be doing at this time. A little ounce of prevention is worth a pound of something, pain.
Yeah, and Doug, I think just to kind of echo some of the points you made, when we were talking about this the other day, we were on the topic, and you were saying that the responsibility has sort of shifted for businesses from protecting everything that's under their roof, that's on their network. And there's a lot more responsibility on end users now. Whereas maybe one person just had to be in control of the whole situation, the users have to be a lot more educated about what they're doing now, because they can't just like shoulder tap the person who set their computer up or whatever.
Right. Yeah, I think this is a good opportunity for businesses to start thinking about training or retraining their people, right? It's one thing if you're in the accounts payable department and you got 15 people working around you, and you get this weird email from the CEO that says, "Quickly, wire $45,000 to this account number before I get angry." Before you could just lean over to one of your other accounts payable clerks and say, "This looks a little odd. I don't recognize, the logo that's in this email that's supposedly our company." But now when people are isolated, there's more tendency to say like, "Well, I don't want the boss to be angry. I got a bunch of things. I got the dog barking. I got the kids pulling on me. Maybe I'll just get this wire transfer done and before I head off to lunch." So I think it's a good opportunity for people to be digging in, making investments in security awareness training. We do that for all of our comprehensive IT company or customers. Remarkably, not that many months ago, we had people who told us like, "Yeah, we don't want to do that. That's kind of a bother." Like, now I think it's a good time for people to look at that. Also, two-factor authentication, or multi-factor authentication. When everybody was in the office, they're like, "Well, I log into the same servers from the same machines in the same locations all the time. It makes sense." Now it's a little bit harder for your IT professionals to determine who's connecting in from what device in what location. So multi-factor authentication is a nice way to prevent what looks like Fred logging in from his home computer in Portland or Vancouver, maybe, I can't remember where you live, Fred, versus some bad guy in some unnamed country working from a Linux box that has never connected it to those servers. So definitely a good opportunity to get some basic security stuff squared away.
Yeah, I think to further that idea, some of the things that we let slide by when we all ran home aren't okay anymore. And that's where we're seeing the security conversation really going now is, hey, we did some stuff that probably needs to be revisited in the name of you conveniently getting your people home, but that can't happen anymore. We have to do some of these things. And I'll echo the security training and the two-factor. That's where we're spending most of our time in the security world with our clients right now, because those are fairly cost-effective things. I think there's probably a lot of people that are really watching their budgets and roadmaps right now, but those are some high-value, low-cost security changes that can be made that you get a pretty good return on, as far as protecting your network and your end users, because they're distracted. I completely believe the distraction part of this, and the scams are getting better.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and the stories, unfortunately, I've heard too many stories about people losing 5- and 6-figure amounts that was needless for them to make that happen. And plus, you know, if you're going to spend $50,000, $100,000 on security, it should be on the preventative part. It'll cost a lot less than that. You'll get a lot more value out of it, and you probably feel less like a heel for the money that you spend.
Yeah, I think Doug Miller, you mentioned that the threats are getting smarter. That's for sure. I know probably the first week or two that we were home here in Portland, all over LinkedIn, there were articles about phishing attacks that were coming through shipping notifications because everybody was getting everything shipped to their houses rather than, you know, picking it up at the store and that kind of thing. And I think those same folks that knew we were all transitioning to being at our houses for several months also know that we're all starting to come back, and they see the gaps in where they may be able to sneak in and make an attack. So it's important to think about that stuff for sure. Now that hopefully we haven't scared the daylights out of you, we'll transition to a little bit of a lighter topic. Something that you had talked about in our last talk, Doug, where we talked a little bit about running your business remotely, which if you missed it, you can find that on our blog. We've got the recording there, was just keeping everyone connected and keeping on top of your business activities. So that's another thing that I think that people may have compromised on that front just to get through what we were getting through. But as this becomes a more or a less temporary thing, I'll say,
Sure.
What are some of the ways that folks can invest in technology to stay on top of what's going on inside the business?
Sure. I won't dive as deeply as we did a few weeks ago, but a couple of points would be, you know, kind of the modern and contemporary ways of office communication. So if your organization's not using something like Teams or WebEx Teams or Slack, this is a great opportunity to implement that. I think if right now, if our entire company communication was centered around email, if we weren't using Slack as we do, I can't even imagine. I mean, email gives me anxiety anyway, but if my entire way that I communicate with people was over email or a phone call, it would be incredibly low productivity for sure. So, you know, I think all of our customers, and probably many of those who are not our customers but are on the call, who are using Office 365, you know, this is a great opportunity to leverage Microsoft Teams because it costs nothing. It's already included in the suite of software that you get. For those who have been doing it for a while, I don't think we're going to move off Slack anytime soon because it would probably be pilloried if we were to suggest such a thing. But, you know, in addition to having lots of ways of connecting with people and video calls and things like that, whatever your flavor is, check it out. Other things, dashboards. So we're fortunate enough that in our business, there's a lot of software vendors that are providing dashboarding tools so you can kind of see what's going on in real time in your business. You know, at any given time, actually, I haven't turned it on yet. I'll do that right now. I can see in real time what's happening with our ticket counts and customer satisfaction surveys and all the things that are like happening in the day-to-day, minute to minute. I can see deals that are closing as they're happening in real time. So I have a really good ability to kind of have a good handle on what's happening in the business. And again, it prevents me from being super, you know, disconnected and therefore sort of anxious and paranoid. So whether your particular industry has got great dashboarding tools or it's something that you can build yourself, again, talking about Office 365, there are some free hooks into Microsoft's Power BI. So you can take data that's coming in or coming out of your business and drop it into some dashboards pretty easily to see what's happening on a day-to-day or real-time basis in your business. So I highly recommend those things, especially as long as this continues to drag out.
Yeah, and Doug, just as you were talking, Andy Zirkle, who's one of our road warriors on the technical side under normal circumstances, just jumped in on the chat and said something about OneDrive. He's saying OneDrive for backing up that laptop that is left on top of a Jeep. And that kind of made me think about cloud services. That's something that we should really be thinking about now as well, I think.
Yeah, you know, and Doug, I know you had something to add too, but I'll just let me throw something out and we'll get back to you. You know, the client server model that we've been all using for 20, 30 years in business is predicated on shared resources, whether they're databases or applications or files or documents or whatnot, that are in a central location that are serving many users in a roughly homogeneous, fast environment, right? So stack up a bunch of servers, stack up a bunch of disks, put them on a fast network, and everybody has the fastest, most efficient way to get at that data, manipulate it, and collaborate. Now, with everything changing, I don't know, if you imagine like everybody on this call, our internet, at home goes from like 10 megabits to 1,000 megabits. Well, now you have to build an infrastructure that like accommodates a 10 megabit connection, whereas at the office, everybody is on 1,000 megabit connection. And that's a great equalizer. It means that people who, if you design the infrastructure to accommodate the 10 megabit person, then it's also going to equally serve the person with fast internet at home. And that basically is the definition of cloud services. If you think about all the people who a year or two ago, like if you were working from home and you were VPNing into the office so you could connect to the server, so you could look at documents and that sort of thing, you're at a big disadvantage versus the person that's in accounts payable that's just down the street or down the hall from the server room. So now is a great time to look at your workloads and say, is this something that could be done in a web browser, done remotely, done in a different way? And right now, everybody's moving to software as a service in the cloud, so this is a great time to pivot in that direction. So Doug, you were saying something earlier about collaboration.
Oh yeah, I was going to jump in on the dashboard thing. When we would talk to our customers about dashboards, typically the framework we would use is we would say, pretend you're on an island, which might be too appropriate for us all working from home. But pretend you're on an island and you're cut off from the rest of your company, and all you got was a letter in the mail every day, and it gave you maybe 10 different things about your business that you cared about. Like, that's what you need to think about when you're trying to build out a good dashboard. Like, what are the 10 things that would tell me the pulse of my company every day if I were away and I couldn't talk to anybody? And, we usually talk with our customers. Some of that might be cash in the bank. It might be accounts receivable. It might be number of new deals, new sales. IT people, we care about like how many tickets got opened, how many tickets got closed. How many widgets left your assembly line. There's probably 8 to 10 numbers in your business that you care about that way, and those are great ways to start with dashboards. Because I think, Doug, you hit the nail on the head. It creates anxiety when you don't know what's going on, and something about being at home and possibly disconnected from your team, it makes that even worse, to where you kind of don't know what's going on. And so by getting some of those metrics around your company in your face every day through a dashboard or an email or something, I have found some security. I found some security blanket around knowing what those numbers are inside our company.
And I think for for the folks that are on your team as well, it's nice to have that reiterated, that these are the 8 to 10 things that I need to be focused on. These are my goals, because everything feels very up in the air to everyone right now. So knowing that those are the things that they need to focus their energy on, and having that reminder that they're working towards those goals with other folks, I think is really beneficial for their morale as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's so many distractions going on. I mean, there was distractions at work, but often the distractions were work related. Now with everybody working from home, there's a lot of non-work related distractions, kind of going back to that productivity equation.
Yeah, I find myself, when I'm working from home, I find myself asking more than usual, what was I doing? So it's good to have that list of like, oh, right, that's what I was doing.
Right.
That's what I was working on. Well, Doug Miller, we'll give you the hot seat for a little bit. You mentioned a little bit about sort of some of the setups that you're seeing. And I think that you said that they were primarily hybrid. Do you have folks that are having everybody come back to the office as well, or what are you seeing over in Texas?
Yeah, so I'll tattletale a little bit on some of our clients that are, we'll say, like your quintessential like independent Texas business. We have some people that refused to shut down the whole time. So believe it or not, we had some companies that we were like, what are y'all doing to deal with COVID? And like, oh no, everybody's still coming to the office. We have deemed ourselves essential. And so we were like, oh, okay, well, we probably aren't going to come to your office. We'll help you remotely. Nonetheless, so a lot of our medical practices, as soon as they could, based on the state's sort of orders, they came back. But they're having to follow some pretty detailed protocol that really slows them down. So in the medical world, we're trying to find anything we can do to speed them back up. And when I say slow them down, like they're limited by the number of patients they can have in the waiting room at a time. They're limited by their schedule. Doctors often will bounce around from room to room to room. They can't do that anymore. They have to stay with one patient, treat the patient, clean up, go to the next patient. Like there's a lot of protocol that they're having to follow, and man, it's really slowing them down. So we're telling our team, like, if there's these clients are going to be really sensitive to anything that slows them down. So if there's a technology problem that's slowing them down, let's figure out how to fix it, because they're in a different spot. A lot of our oil and gas customers, they've elected to leave people at home because they can basically do their job from home as they were doing it in the office. It also gives them a little bit of freedom because we've had some clients where if they have we'll say a scare or somebody that does test positive, it potentially wipes out their office and they have to send them all home. So by having some people work hybrid, you're like limiting your risk and limiting the exposure of your whole team having to be sent home. And that's basically what we're following right now. We're limiting the number of people that are all together inside of our company so that we don't have a situation where we have to say everybody has to work from home for the next 2 weeks because we were all exposed because of XYZ. So we're limiting that footprint or that attack surface of the people that are all together at once. We've seen some of our oil and gas customers do that too, where they're limiting the focus. The ones that are probably the absolute most hybrid, the attorneys and the law offices that we're working for, they have people, feels like they have people everywhere. They're doing depositions over Zoom, and they're doing, paperwork with people in the office, and the attorney is at home. And some of the attorneys are at their lake houses, just like having a grand old time. And that's been a challenge. And those are the people, Doug. Those are the ones that are falling for some of these scams right now.
Yeah.
The most are some of those professionals that are not. There was a great one, and we're going to post a posting about it. We had a great one come through. It was a very, very well done Office 365 fake secure email. It was a fantastic fish. Like, you looked at it and we were like, wow, they really put effort into this, Nonetheless, those are the ones that we're really seeing in this hybrid, more the attorneys and just general business, offices that we've seen kind of go hybrid.
I know we want to have some time for Q&A, but I also, when we talked a little bit earlier, you were seeing a ton of business and people changing up the way they're doing their phone systems. You want to throw something out about that?
Yeah. So we noticed, even across our own client base, when you have to call an office right now and the receptionist answers the phone and she says, let me take a message and so will call you back from their cell phone at home. Like, talk about inefficient, talk about really slowing down the process. And so we had a couple of customers that a voice over IP phone system was on their roadmap already, and they accelerated that as the next project to work on. So we've implemented a couple phone systems during this time because it just dramatically affected how easy it was for people to work from home. We used this example, like our dispatcher for Straight Edge, she literally took her phone to her house and started answering every phone call that came in, and nobody knew the difference. And that's what you would want in a voice over IP, phone system. You'd want it to seem super seamless, whether they're home or in the office, exact same experience. And when we share that with a customer that's struggling with a screwed to the wall phone system or something that just doesn't have some capability to work from home, they really saw the benefit of that right now. So I think around telephony, because that's sort of like the first level of communication that a lot of people think about between them and probably their customers. You can use Teams and Slack to collaborate internally, but those really aren't customer facing. So when you're talking about how you service your patients or you service your customers or what have you, that phone system might be that first technology piece that you can really dig into and make a better, more reliable, setup for those people that are working from home. It's also a way to get some people out of the office if you're trying to make space in your office. If there's some critical people that need to be in the office, man, get some people out of the office. And if they can work from home, and if answering phones from home is a thing that they can do, that's maybe an easy place to do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so just a couple more questions and we'll open it up to the masses and wrap things up. But one thing that I just wanted to touch on is when we all did this like initial shift and started working from home or changed up the way that we did business the first time around, it was really hard to get your hands on some things. Like I know laptops were kind of hard to come by, and I know from ordering your Jabra headset, they're still a little hard to come by on the consumer marketplace as well. From a business standpoint, are those things more available now, and are sellers doing anything to make this a little bit more palatable for businesses that are having to sink all these funds into this area where they probably didn't expect to?
Yeah, actually, I can say that, not very long ago, a laptop order, you were probably going to be waiting 6 to 8 weeks before something came through. There's lots of other things going on in the market before COVID hit that made a lot of supply constraints happen. And then what I was told is, at least for Dell, when this all happened and suddenly you have all these federal government workers that have to work from home at the same time, the federal government went and bought all inventory of all laptops available from all vendors. They're a pretty big buying force. I checked last night, actually, before I went to bed, just to be able to address this. I saw that in our distribution, Dell has got a ton of laptops available in the warehouse ready to ship. So, if you're doing custom orders, it could still take time, but at least I know if somebody called me up for 1,000 laptops, I could have them ship out tomorrow. So anybody who wants to order 1,000 laptops, I'll be available after the call. I think we're still seeing constraints around webcams, and as you mentioned, headsets. But I think, fortunately, that laptop constraint is gone. These not to shill these things again, but I do know that all that like small office type of routers and security appliances, those were also out of stock for a great amount of time. Now I'm told that they've got a warehouse full of these, so people are making deals on them. And as you were asking about what are vendors doing, it's not the first rodeo for a lot of these companies like Cisco and Dell and HP and all that stuff. They know that in times of uncertainty, people tend to reduce or slow down their investments. The good news is that, interest rates are so low that all those vendors are making financing programs very attractive. Their costs of funds are very low, and so they can extend, working capital arrangements to customers very liberally. So we're seeing a lot of interest in that right now.
Cool. Well, I think that pretty much hits all the points that we were hoping to talk about today, but we'd love to hear any questions. So if you have any, feel free to unmute yourself and speak up and ask us what you've got, or you can drop it in the chat if you're feeling like you'd rather type instead. So Steve Puller says, where do you recommend buying products such as headsets, monitors? Amazon, somewhere else? That's a great question.
That is a great question. We sell a lot of those things, whether Portland Internet Works is your, procurement standard. I often say we're a slow, expensive Amazon. If you know what it is that you want and price is everything, then, I'd shoot for Amazon directly. If you're looking for something that's you need more guidance and you need maybe some assistance getting set up, or if you're doing like a big quantity deal, we can often procure bigger quantity discounts than you can from Amazon or even Dell directly. I know that back in the day we used to buy a lot of stuff from Dell direct, not through our normal distribution channels, and they had very good promotional prices, but it was like limit 5. And we can usually get much deeper discounts when we're doing like larger quantities. So if it's a whole refresh, I would encourage you to talk to us.
Yeah, I can say from experience that I was just kind of looking at some of the stuff last week as well, and I can say that it's really still hard to come by some of that stuff on the consumer marketplace. When you're like looking for quantity of one, it's tough.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you're kind of stuck. I see that Sheila mentions it took weeks to get webcams from Best Buy. Yeah, you think about it like that sort of business to consumer or business to small business, there's not a whole lot of leverage there. The good news is, we buy millions of dollars worth of equipment from our distributors. So sometimes when we need to pull in a favor to get something shipped to us, we can make that happen. Steve asks, same for software like QuickBooks. I do believe that we can provision, or we can get QuickBooks licenses. Ask us about that again, Steve, if that's something that we can provide for you.
Awesome. Any other questions or anything? I know that there was a lot of information, so there might be some absorption time that needs to take place. Well, Doug Miller, I have one last, Sheila asks, what is the name and model of the Meraki device that you have?
It is a Meraki Z3, and they also have a Z3C, which has a cellular backend. So in case you need it to, I don't know if your internet is flaky, if you want to back it up with a LTE card.
Awesome. Cool. So sorry, Doug Miller. I think some of us are like, we can kind of see what things are going to be like, but just since you have a little bit of a futuristic sense of it, since you're a little bit farther along the line, can you tell us when things go back to normal, is it a new normal, or is it just like we're back in February of 2020?
No, it's definitely different. It's definitely different. We've had clients where we had to go make space in their offices so that they could socially distance better. We have clients that, like I said, have people staying at home and other people in the office. We have clients that came back and had to follow other protocols, so that's been difficult. And then I'll tell you what we're dealing with right now. I mean, even as early as this week, we're dealing with a client that has someone test positive for the virus, and how they respond and how we respond and what we do about that client. So those are some things you need to be thinking about. Everybody on this call, technology or not, how will you respond if one of your clients has somebody, test positive for the virus? How will you respond if you have somebody test positive, for the virus and those kind of things? I'll tell you what's hard about it is it ends up being how do I take care of my team? How do I provide a service to my customer? And then how do I make sure I satisfy my HR, side of the business too, that we're doing things that are, legal and right, and that's hard. It's a complicated kind of thing. And like I said, that's what we're dealing with this week as Texas has opened back up and people have gotten out and about. We're seeing the cases rise. And for the longest time, I didn't know anybody personally that tested positive. And in the last 2 weeks, now I do. And so that just means that it's getting a little closer where, some part of normal is going to be dealing with the issue of somebody in your organization or in your customer's organization getting the virus and what you do as a result of that. So that's been kind of an interesting challenge, but it absolutely didn't just snap back into place where it used to be. So what we all thought was maybe a V-shaped recovery, I believe is more of a W with a long tail on it. Like it's going to kind of bounce a little and then slowly get back to where we're at. Fortunately, a lot of the businesses that we work for weren't in industries that were hit so hard. And so they're optimistic about how they're going to recover and how things will get more normal. And that's a great place to be in. And I know Doug and I both been on calls with people in other organizations, and they've been in industries that are hit so hard and really devastated. And a lot of ours haven't. And that's been a fortunate thing for them and for us. But even the ones that were minimally affected, they didn't come right back how they were.
Yeah, and I think that, that's an important point as well, is like we're all under a lot of pressure and under a lot of stress right now. But some good news is the technology is out there. It does exist. All of the topics that we've talked about today, there are solutions for those problems. There's a lot of problems that we're still trying to find solutions to in the world, but this one we've got figured out. So that'll be one thing that you don't have to worry so much about.
Right.
And I think there was a question in the chat about what the Microsoft dashboard that you had mentioned earlier was called.
Yeah, that's Microsoft Power BI, as in business intelligence. You can Google for that, and there's free levels. There's some benefits I think you get from Office 365, and there's some premium level stuff. It's basically like a toolkit. If you think about the early days of Excel, where it gives you a platform and gives you some like templates of things that you can do, that's a great way to get started. Of course, there's a million consultants out there who can, build things up for you that are specific and integrated into your particular applications or your data sets. But there's a lot of good ways to get started out there.
Awesome. Cool. Well, then we'll just get things wrapped up. So Rainey, if you want to throw those last couple slides up and we'll turn everybody loose. Awesome. Cool. So in addition to this event that you were on today, which I hope everybody learned something and you had a good time and it was a good use of an hour, we do also have another event coming up that's a little less structured than this one. It's our virtual community happy hour, which is essentially just a little WebEx party that we do once a month, and we invite all of our friends. So we've got some things like activities, give you an opportunity to sort of meet some people that aren't in your immediate recent Zoom call list. And we'll give away some prizes to some local businesses that are maybe having a little bit of a tougher time adapting as well. So that's happening on July 15th at 4 p.m. And you can RSVP on our website, which is pdx.net/events. And yeah, and also we post all of our events on pdx.net/events. So just keep an eye on there if you're looking for some things to fill your calendar or interested in some similar topics as well. We're also really into social media. So we're on Twitter, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, and we also are posting to our blog a couple times a week as well. So that's pdx.net/blog. And then as well as our company profiles. And Doug, I think Straight Edge is probably on all those channels as well. So you could follow Straight Edge Technology in all those places. So LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that fun stuff. And Doug and his team over in Texas do lots of events as well. And you can also connect with Doug Westervelt and Doug Miller on LinkedIn if you're interested in some maybe more one-to-one conversation. So yeah. I think that's all that we've got today. I'm just taking a look at the chat. I don't see any more questions. So thank you all so much for being here. If you have any questions about anything, feel free to reach out to us in any of the ways that we mentioned. I know that you've got at least Rainey's contact information, so you can also drop us a line and email or give us a call if you have any questions and want to chat more about anything as well. So thank you all so much for coming.